Welcome everybody to Beaver Politics, to our Indigenous Matters session, which we're going to be hosting every Monday night at 6 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. So I'm so happy to see, it looks like we've got 19 people here today so far, and that's really good for our first event. The goal of our discussion tonight is to, number one, get to know each other, to create a space where Indigenous people can come together to talk about the matters that are important to us, to talk about the issues that are relevant today. Right now, one of the top issues from my perspective and from things that I've been hearing from other Indigenous people on the app is our opportunity to participate in the upcoming federal election. And I want to acknowledge that not all Indigenous people in Canada believe that we are part of this system and that this Canadian government has been imposed upon us, and it is always going to be a colonial government. I don't deny that in any way, but I do want to share the reason that motivated me to participate in this and to host this is that I'm very concerned about what's at risk. And that is, the Trudeau government by no means was perfect, but they've created a lot of good synergy, some good traction in reconciliation, and they've opened some doors for us where our voices are stronger and our issues are being taken seriously and our rights are being recognized and upheld. And I'm very concerned that that's something that might be lost. I'm not here to tell anybody how to vote. I want to share issues. I want to inspire people to vote. And if it's only for this time, then perhaps, that so be it. But we do have a lot at risk if we were to face a Polyev majority. Ooh, we hit a goal. So a Polyev majority could result in the undoing of a lot of the good steps that were taken through reconciliation. And if not even he may not get rid of everything that's done, but he may underfund a lot of it or prevent it from advancing further than what it is. And there are a lot of things that aren't public yet that are underway, which were designed to empower Indigenous people in this country that may not ever see any realization or come to fruition. And that's very concerning to me. So I wanted to create a space where we could come together, talk about how we can motivate our people to participate in the upcoming election. And over time, once that election's behind us and we know where things are going, we can start talking about the different issues that we face as Indigenous people in this country. We can talk about it from traditional points of view. We can talk about things from a more participating in the colonial system point of view. All of it's relevant. And I looked at it, Andre Bear made a really good TikTok earlier about, our future's in our hands. But when we have a Canadian government that isn't willing to listen and work with us and collaborate with us and support our sovereignty, our self-determination, and our self-governance, then all of that's at risk. And it makes it more and more challenging for us to realize all of those things that we've been working so hard to do. And I think about the ancestors all the time and how much they endured so that we could still be here today. And what scares me is I feel like we're heading towards another time in history where we're going to be facing those similar challenges, and colonialism and assimilation is looming. And Mr. Poilievre's platform is primarily on economic participation in this country and having us at the table as participants in the economy, which is not a bad thing. But it's a bad thing when it's not in consideration of our rights, when they're not protecting land, air, water, and all of our living relatives on the land that we depend on and that we have been given instruction from Creator to care for. So I want to open up for some conversation. For a little bit of logistics, I've been in some lives before where people talk over each other and there's no respect for time and consideration of taking turns. In the way of our people, I want to have a talking circle. So we'll give everybody a chance to say what they want to say, and then move to the next person and the next person. And if you have if you want to rebut or get involved in a conversation, I ask that you please be respectful and we'll wait our turns. I do want to point out too that the beaver is the teaching of wisdom. So I think that that's a beautiful thing, because as us as Indigenous people, we have so much wisdom to share, and we have been through this before. We have blood memory. Our ancestors survived a lot so that we could be here today to continue making sure that our future generations have a health and safe future. So with that, I'd like to open the floor to, like, if Smarshy, you're top of list there, if you wanted to add some to the conversation. And anybody that, if you're interested in coming up, please request to come up and add to the conversation. So Smarshy, I'll turn it to you, and I'll give you, let me know when you're wrapped up, and then we can pass it on to Jenna.
You can pass it to Jenna. I'm just about to eat at my mom's house, so I'll
Oh,
go
okay.
after I'm done.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Smarshy. Jenna, would you like to add to the discussion?
I don't really think I have anything to add. Just thank you for having me up, and if same as what let's see, Nerdy said, if there's Indigenous voices that want to come up, I will definitely step down because I'm white lady, but an ally.
Yeah, absolutely. And we appreciate our allies, and we are dependent sometimes on the having that voice at those other tables where we're not always sitting. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really critical that our message be shared, and that it's important for us too as Indigenous people to know that there are other Canadians who understand the issues and who care about where we're at in Canadian history, what happened in the past and what's happening today. And this is something, when I started creating on TikTok, I really started to see how many Canadians really do understand it and care and are interested in seeing Indigenous people move through reconciliation and realize our proper place in Canada.
Mm-hmm. And I think it helps that the younger generations are getting some education in school right now about that, whereas in my generation, as I mentioned earlier, did not
Absolutely.
appropriate or accurate education.
No, and I too, like I was born and raised in Calgary, and
Yeah.
I did not experience any type of education about my history either. And the sad thing for me, my father sadly experienced racism and discrimination in his
Mhm.
life, and I think he really denied me my indigeneity to protect me. And I wasn't raised with culture or much awareness around my indigeneity. I was raised told I was a half breed, then a Métis, and now I have status, so I do identify as Métis and First Nation, but I'm also a settler population. My mother is non-Indigenous,
Mhm.
and my grandfather settled lands in southern Saskatchewan, and he was a Catholic, but he had no knowledge about what was happening with residential schools and how lands were being taken from Indigenous people. So I think if he were alive today to hear these stories and to learn the truth, he would have been very hurt, and disappointed by his church, and also disappointed to learn that the wealth that he realized, he was by no means a rich man, but he was a landowner and a
Mhm.
successful farmer, but so he made a living on stolen lands, and I don't think he would have felt good about that. So I think it's important that we have these conversations with our settler friends. Go yet.
Oh, go ahead, Nerdy.
There was a question down in the comments from Gigi. How would you go about getting young people to vote?
Well, this is exactly what we're here to explore. So thank you for that, Charity. I'm hoping, for me personally, what I would like to do is try to participate with the nations where I have friends. I've worked in quite a few First Nations here in Alberta, through this app, if we can. I actually listening to CBC yesterday on my way home from a meeting, and they were interviewing young Indigenous people who are working in climate action, who are actually part of litigating against the government of Ontario for failing to protect them from climate change, and also for over permitting environmental impacts on their lands. So the I think the young people are motivated. It's my generation. And maybe like I'm so full disclosure, I'm 55 years old. My generation and some of the folks that maybe live more remotely, I think, are the ones that are a little more reluctant to participate because they still experience the trauma related to colonialism. They've never felt they can trust the government of Canada, and rightfully so. So that I find is where the challenge is going to be, but I also don't want to lose sight of the youth. I think it's really critically important that the youth are engaged and that we get them out. But from what I'm hearing, they're pretty excited about this next election, and especially when it comes to water. Water resources are something that are critical to Indigenous people. Um, and not, not just the water, but water is life, and without water nothing else on this planet survives. And I was at a conference like about a year and a half ago, where Nijan Sinclair, late Murray Sinclair's son, he was a keynote speaker there, and he had said to the room, and it was all Indigenous people, but he said, Indigenous people are not environmentalists. We are here to fight for our relations. And those relations are the standing people, or the trees, the four-legged, the winged, the swimmers, and the crawlers. All of that is our family. We feel connected to them. Those are our brothers, our sisters, our kin, right? In the Cree language, it's Wokotowin. Everything is connected. So I that really sits with me. That has been, since I heard him say those words, something that drives me to work hard to protect Mother Earth and to ensure that our future generations have the ability to practice their rights on the land like our ancestors did. So I'd love for somebody to come up if you're interested in joining. I would love to get some more ideas too from other people about how we can get our people motivated to vote and participate in this upcoming election. And once this one's done, if folks don't want to vote again, so be it. Vote for your chief and councils and your leadership in your communities. But this is a turning point in Canadian history for us. We're at a place, in all the good work that the previous government started. Again, I acknowledge it's not perfect, but a lot of good things were underway. And it would be just, I think, a travesty for us to lose all of that. Charity,
Yeah.
did you want to add? No? Okay.
I'm just reading comments.
Okay.
I figure I'm standing with you with the camera on, so you're not all by yourself with the camera on.
If I could get my camera to work, but I've been on live before, but it just won't let me turn my camera on now, and I don't know.
Oh, yeah, you don't have enough followers to do it. That's
Yeah, I've only
why.
got 400 and something, which I'm very grateful for, but I've just started, so I don't have a lot of followers.
That's okay.
But
What else can we chat
I
about
have a
today?
question.
Sure,
If
please.
you want to chat about it, what was your reaction to PP saying that Justin Trudeau is responsible for racism in Canada and that it didn't exist before Trudeau? Now, I know I was just like, I was so
Well,
it was such a ridiculous, absurd thing to say, and I didn't even know how to process it.
yeah. Well, I can speak from experience, like how I had said earlier that I really wasn't raised with indigeneity. How I found out I'm Indigenous is I went to grade 1 and the kids at school called me a dirty Indian.
Mm.
So there it is, folks. That was 1975, probably about there. My parents, who met in Regina, they both worked in a department store in Regina as young people. They were 17 and 18 or something like that. And my dad, who is the Indigenous parent, the manager of the store told my mom that if she didn't break up with him, she would lose her job. So racism goes far and deep into our roots and into the history of Canada. It all of North America is founded on racism.
I could tell you stories from growing up in Ontario and the racism I heard. And I won't repeat any because a lot of name calling, but it absolutely existed. I grew up in Ontario, in a smaller Northern Ontario town, and people made all kinds of comments about Indigenous people that were unfriendly. growing up. And I had some cousins that are half Jamaican, so I got to hear a lot coming from that too. So the idea that racism is somehow new and is just so untrue. And he like, I'm reading this book right now because I'm doing a book club, White Fragility. I don't know if
Good book.
anyone's heard of it.
Good book. Good book.
Fantastic book. Fantastic so far. And it talks about this idea that they're taking from Martin Luther King's speech, Dr. Martin Luther King's speech, where he talks about how soon he hopes that at some point people will be judged by their character rather than the color of their skin. And PP pretty much, I was really offended actually that those words came out of his mouth, saying that there is no racism, when that is just, yeah, just pretending you don't see color because it's more convenient for you. It does not make you not racist.
Absolutely.
How's it going?
Hi, Dean. Miss Smarshy wanted to speak first, if you don't mind. So I'm going to let Smarshy speak, and then we'll come to you, okay?
That's fine.
Thank you,
Okay, I
Dean.
just wanna
Appreciate it.
I just wanna go with a comment. It says Indigenous people own this land we call Canada. We don't even teach the native language. Okay, we don't own the land. We are sovereign keepers of this land. So it was given to us by Creator in order to keep the land going, keeping it prosperous, keeping it growing. It was flourishing, it was growing, everything was going good until colonialism set in. Now, I don't have very nice things to say about PP, so I'll make it TikTok friendly, and I know I won't use ableist language because that's wrong. That's not something I want to do. So when PP said there was no racism in Canada till wokeism arrived, that's actually not a true thought. Because I remember going through my life not knowing who I was and then finding out what I actually am and learning to navigate this world being thinking that you're one person and now you're this other person. It's not about wokeism. Wokeism is not the word that we should be using. It's the acknowledgement that some people are actually waking up to see the idea that racism is well and flourishing in Canada. There is a person on here that I was watching a video with, and it said they answered a question. Well, why do we have to keep talking about racism? Blah 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 blah. Well, the reason we talk about racism is because, and the things that happened years ago, if we don't talk about it, about the effects it had on us then, we're not actually going to understand what the society effects has on us today because of those repercussions of what's going on. So it was stewardship, it wasn't ownership. Thank you very much, Pumpkin. Yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say. I'm not
Okay.
gonna, I'm just not gonna vote conservative because I know it's going against my people and everyone around me. So I'm voting for everyone, not just me and my community.
Thank you, Smarshy. And yeah, I agree too. Like, ownership is a foreign concept. We are stewards of land. We are related to land. We come from land. The land is us. We are the land. And that is a teaching that also sits deep with me that I learned early in my career. And really helped me understand why. Like, I'm a biologist and I never really knew because I grew up in the city. Why am I so connected to nature? And I want to be in the trees and I want to hang out with animals. And I know now it's that innate part of me that has that connection to land, that identifies those animals and other living things as relations. So I appreciate that very much, Smarshy. And we'll give Dean, if you'd like an opportunity, please. The floor is yours.
Hey, I don't know where to begin, but I think that as I was sitting here listening, I'm going to begin with the fact that Christopher Columbus sailed around the world and discovered another culture. And when he discovered that culture, he started feeding them foreign substances and basically polluted their minds and corrupted their minds and turned them against each other. And then from there on, he started putting borders up and teaching certain practices that led them astray. And we need that culture back. Now, on the other hand, when you go and you talk to about conservatives and stuff like that, I am a member of the Conservative Party, and when I hear the fact that I grew up, when I hear what you guys are saying, and the fact is, I grew up in Fort St. James, BC. If anybody knows what Fort St. James, BC is, it's a home to Takla, Leo Creek, Binche Teo, um, like Tache, Morristown, Haida Gwaii, every single indigenous culture there is in BC. That's my friends. Those are my friends. Those are my people. I grew up in a little town. I went from kindergarten to grade 12. There was a Catholic school, and there was a David Hoy school, and there was a high school. Those people that um, went from the Catholic school to the high school where we all met became my friends because I was a bullied student. I was a Ukrainian. My father was a higher upper in the logging industry. So when I was talked to at the dinner table, I wasn't allowed to speak in public about what was said. So I became very much a loner, and I was very much abused, and I was very much belittled by all sorts of different people. So for the last 3 years, I have been speaking up and talking to Pierre Polyev every single day since my mom was unalived. She was she wrote a national anthem. It's called Canada Our Canada. Look it up. It's Jean Kay at Poetry to Inspire. Canada Our Canada is a non-racial anthem. It does bring back the birds and the bees and the trees and every single walk of life that is known to man. It is about our creator. It is about peace, unity, and everything else under the sun. So for the last 3 years, since she passed away, I have been fighting my butt off to try and get my voice out. I don't like to be a part of a great big convoy. I don't like to be a part of great big debates. I don't like to be a part of a great big group. My wife is very, very we haven't been together for 10 months, but she doesn't like crowds whatsoever. Neither do I. It gets really, really frustrating. I don't get to speak my voice. I don't get to be heard. I would much rather come onto a live where I don't get to be pressured. I don't have the higher ups basically doing what they're doing. I don't have the division. I am who I am. I write every single day. I am completely against hard drugs and safe supplies and everything else under the sun, which Pierre is against as well. We need to get that out of the reserves. We need to get that out of our lives. We need to lower taxes. We need to do all sorts of things. We need to bring this back to being Canada,
So,
which is all of our
D-
lands.
Dean, I'm
okay.
going to interrupt one quick second. I really need you to use TikTok friendly words. Drugs is not a good word to use on TikTok. It gets us flagged. So if you could use pharmaceuticals or spicy medicine or
Right,
something
I'll
like
use
that, that would be.
pharmaceuticals because that's all they
No,
are.
you can't say that word either. You can't say that middle
Okay.
word. So
All right.
pharmaceuticals or spicy medicine, please. We want to protect our page. Thank
That's
you.
fine. I can do that. I've been clean and sober for 25 years. I know what the ins and outs are. I've watched my indigenous family unalive themselves due to being addicted to them. I've lost within the last 3 years, I lost my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and 5 years ago, I had my niece unalive herself using a pew pew. I have witnessed moccasin flats on a daily basis. I go to meetings. I go everywhere possible to get rid of that poison that is killing unaliving all of us.
Yeah.
And when I go and I work my butt off to try and get a person in power to listen to me, and then I come online and I see something like this, not to offend you, because the censorship that JT has put on all of us, that has divided all of us and doesn't allow any of us to see the actual truth. We
So,
haven't seen the truth for a long, long time.
okay.
Um,
Okay, Dean. I really appreciate your perspective, and we're here to hear perspectives. But something, and I really, it's nice to know that there's somebody who's willing to come into the conversation who is a conservative. That's so then we can rely on you, who has a connection to Mr. Polyev, to
that's
maybe
what I would
bring
love to
some of these
hear.
issues forward. Because what I'm concerned about, so here's something that I do, and I hear what you're saying about addictions and all of those types of things. I work in a very land-based realm, right? So my work is based on Indigenous rights on the land and the environment. So something that maybe most Canadians don't know, and I'll share today, is there's a process called the duty to consult. And what
Okay.
that means is that when the Crown, if it's the federal Crown, so the government of Canada or the government of Alberta, has say an application for a well site or a pipeline, something like that, in front of them that they're going to approve, that means if it's on Crown land, that government, be it the provincial or the federal, must ensure that that activity is not impacting the rights of Indigenous people. And what Mr. Polyev has in mind is to get rid of those regulations so that that duty to consult us is no longer a requirement. And that means that they're going to be able to take up land, they're going to be able to impact water, they're going to be able to clear cut forests, and we're not going to have anywhere left to practice rights. I've done studies here in Alberta that have shown that there is 9% of intact land left for the practice of Indigenous rights. That is very scary. And that means our future generations don't get to learn about medicines. They don't get to eat healthy foods off of the land. Our moose are sick. Our fish are sick. Nobody wants to eat fish here in Alberta anymore. And so that's where I'm coming from. I respect your position and your perspective, and I'm glad that you joined us for this conversation. And I'm hopeful that the next time you speak to Mr. Polyev, maybe raise to him and ask him, and maybe you can come back and tell us what he says. What is he going to do to ensure that Indigenous people still have the ability to practice their rights on the land, still have access to all of the Crown lands that we have access today, also be able to clean up the messes that exist on those Crown lands so that we can continue to access those lands in the future. So I love that we have these different perspectives. And
The same kind of goes for myself, right? I was born 5 minutes from my home. I have grown up. I was born in Prince George. I was raised 5 minutes from where I actually live to this day. And when I go back in time over the last 57 years, and I come to the point where I now have 12 grandkids that don't necessarily have the rights that I had when I was a child. Like, I could go out, and I lived on Stewart Lake. I could go fishing. I could go hunting. I could go out in my boat, go sailing. I could do whatever I wanted back in the day. And that was because I was born a Canadian. I was born here. I don't have any other place to go. I work hand in hand with Indigenous my entire life. I don't want pipelines going through my country. I don't want land destroyed. I don't want Mother Nature's animals to be destroyed. I don't hunt. I don't own a pew pew. I set spiders free. I would love to figure out how to actually tame a mosquito so they're not such bloodsuckers like our prime minister. But I can't do that. There are certain elements in life that we can't control.
absolutely.
And when we have somebody that's in our party that wants to listen, if we go out and we basically throw names in his face, like the Indigenous culture has had their entire life, I know for a fact I'm not going to listen. I'm going to go against. I need to stand up. I need to work with. I don't need to throw things in somebody's face. They have made mistakes. Like I said, 25 years ago, I was in a snow shack. I walked out of a snow shack. I put my Indigenous kids into foster care, and I have been clean and sober ever since September 1st, 2000. I don't do drugs. I don't do marijuana. I don't
I see
smoke
medicine.
cigarettes. I don't I do not do anything under the sun except view the source and our creator. The creator is the one that created our land. He created the planet. He created islands. He created people. He made certain colors. He made certain people. And it wasn't necessarily his fault. It's all the shade of the sun. It isn't.
Yeah, and genetics
And genetics and stuff like that. Yes, it's. But if you start name calling, that causes division.
Well, can I cut in for a second, Dean?
yes, please.
Sure.
I'm
so
curious
keen-
about something, and I don't want to turn this into a debate, but PP kind of name calls a lot, all the time.
Yeah, he
Over and
does.
over.
He's in a political party.
That doesn't make it okay, honey.
The
It
political,
just doesn't.
I have not. I'm on the outskirts. Like I said, and in this thing that I just said, I do not like being a part of. But when I managed to finally get a voice and have some of the people in BC listening so that I could actually use a voice and get a voice, then I need to be careful on what I say. I can get heated in the moment and start name calling just like everybody else. I
I don't think
can.
PP's name calling out of being heated though. He has
No,
plans. He thinks about his
he
names.
he
It's
he
very
is
intentional.
definitely. I don't know one Canadian that isn't heated, to tell the truth. I really don't know any Canadians right now that aren't heated. I don't know any Canadians right now that are not depressed, overwhelmed, and sick of what's going on in our country. I do not know one single person
I
that
think
that is
Smashy
happy
Smash
with
wants
the
to say
food
something.
prices.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
And so,
Maybe
and
let's
Tina,
give.
we're gonna give Smarshy a chance. Thank you
Yes, that's fine.
for your position and for sharing with us. I appreciate that you took the time to come and join our conversation. We'll turn the floor over to Smarshy now. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay,
Thank
for
you.
one thing, I agree. We need to get this poison out of our country. Absolutely, 100% agree with you. The thing is, Justin Trudeau is not to blame for all the problems in Canada. It is all
Never
levels
said
of
he was.
government. I said it is all levels of government that are actually at fault for all the problems that we have. Housing is dedicated to provincial immigration and all that stuff at the federal level, but that's another day, another discussion. But what you're doing here is you're saying that you're a conservative, and I respect that. You're Indigenous, I respect that. But here's the thing. I cannot get behind a man who wants to destroy what we've worked so hard in the last 10 years under the liberal government that we've had in politics and as a prime minister with Justin Trudeau. We have to hold all governments accountable. It's not just Justin Trudeau, and everybody has to understand it's not just one person. Yes, I don't agree with some things that have happened in this country. I agree with you 100%. But if you look back historically, we never had spicy medicine or spicy water or fire water or anything like that before colonialization. So if you look way, way back, there's so many things wrong with the government of Canada. You have to look at the red paper and the white paper and this and that. And you have to look at the residential schools and the 60 scoop and the Every Child Matters movement. And you have to look at this. You have to look at it as a whole. You can't just pick apart what you want to look at. You have to look at everything from a standpoint. That's the thing. And do you believe Justin Trudeau did good for the community? I believe he did. I believe he did some really good things, and there were some really not so good things that he did. But again, we cannot blame just one person for the entire problems for all problems in this country. It is everyone in charge of this country that has to be put into blame. You have to hold everyone accountable.
Yeah.
And PP does do a lot of name calling. Yes, I get heated all the time. I believe it. Everyone gets heated. I get it. But the thing is, you can't just say, oh, well, he censors us. He does this, because that's the rhetoric that absolutely is pushed by the Conservative Party, and that's what's dangerous for us.
I agree. And also, we need to also hold our Indigenous leaders accountable. You know, they are also leaders in our own communities who have relationships with the provinces and they have relationships with the federal government. This is the thing for Indigenous people. Government is in our bedroom. Government, especially when you live on reserve, government decides when you get a house. Government decides your level of education. Government decides where your sewage goes, how your garbage is being managed. This is all funded through government. And not tax dollars, though. That's different. This is all through revenues realized from Indigenous lands. However, for Indigenous people, it's so critical that we vote because of so many decisions that are made on our behalf. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with the term the fiduciary obligation. So Canada has a fiduciary obligation to First Nations specifically because of the Indian Act. Because Indian Reserve lands are federal crown lands which are held in trust for the use and benefit of those First Nation members that reside there or members of that nation. Canada makes, sometimes it used to, not so much anymore, but they used to make unilateral decisions for First Nations. And this fiduciary obligation that's owed to us, we can never sever that. And I noticed someone said in the comments too that Mr. Polyev is attempting or has, talked about getting rid of the Indian Act, which is not a terrible thing all the time. Like there might be some amendments we could do, but getting rid of that Indian Act also gets rid of that fiduciary obligation. And the fiduciary kind of means it's almost like a parent-child relationship, which I don't even like that those words come out of my mouth. But it is the position that Canada put First Nations in through the Indian Act. And now we're in a situation where we've never had economy in First Nations for decades. There weren't businesses there. There's no place to employ people. You're not putting your money any money that a First Nation member makes through their job goes back into the economy of the neighboring town, never back into their own economy, because they might have a gas station. Some look at, for my example, we have Enoch now, which has got the River Creek Casino. They've developed a strip mall and a business center and a gas station and restaurants and things like that. So now there is an economy in that nation. But there's only a handful of First Nations out of the 634 First Nations in this country that have had that opportunity to develop that economy. So this, I want to be caught, for Dean, for your information. And I really appreciate, again, that you came up today, because if you do have that relationship with Mr. Polyev, I would love for you to go and have these conversations with him. And maybe you can come back and report back to us what you've learned from him and what his commitment might be to help us ensure that our future generations are going to be able to practice their rights on the land. Because the conservative government right now wants to sell our resources. And
I don't think that's true. I really don't think that's true. And basically, like I said, in the things that I have said, it's censored media. The media is basically wanting to divide. And I know that nobody wants to. I'm not going to blame Justin Trudeau. I am going to blame the absolute corrupt elite. The elite are destroying our planet, are destroying due to greed. They are destroying the land. They are controlling the media. They're pushing. We're talking about two people. You know how much? There's 48 million people in Canada. We're talking about two people being able to have complete control of our lives. That's not right. I'm sorry. I don't care who you are. That isn't right. But like I said, for the last 3 years, I have managed to get to a place where somebody and one party is actually starting to listen. I talk about exactly what you're sorry, but you're singing to the choir. You are singing to the choir. I have been fighting the same fight you are fighting right now for 50 years.
Yeah, I've been doing
I
this
have
for 30
indigenous
almost.
I have indigenous family. I am related to more indigenous people than I am the other side. When it comes to going across Canada and into the States, which is North America, which is Turtle Island, which is basically belongs to North Americans and has been divided amongst white people or whatever you want to call them. It's a race that is basically corrupt. There is good white people, there's evil white people. There is good indigenous people, there's evil indigenous people. And when the indigenous evil and the white evil come together, we all suffer. And we're all on the same page. We're all fighting for the same thing. And sometimes we need to step back, swallow our pride, and have faith in something that's completely new, completely new.
So that
And
wouldn't be
so
the
I'm not
Conservative
trying to
Party.
say vote. I'm not saying could vote conservative
Yeah.
because I would much rather have a majestic purple indigenous culture up on the stand. I would much rather have an indigenous leader that is actually 100% indigenous and isn't
Okay.
going out and doing anything else.
And I really appreciate, I think that's wonderful. And I agree with you. This is something I've also thought about, and maybe something we can talk about in future lives on Beaver Politics is, do we need an Indigenous party? Maybe an Indigenous party for the people, like all people. not just Indigenous people.
It's your digital marketing.
Sorry,
Oh,
I was trying to find something.
So, I want to also, if anybody else wants to come up, maybe if we want someone to come get, go down now so that if others want to join the discussion. Jana, did you have anything more you want to add? And Dean, we've heard a lot from you, and I don't mean to be rude, and you're welcome to come back. We're going to do this every Monday. So, but I'd like to give more opportunity to others if they'd like to join.
See ya.
Thank you for taking the time to have the conversation with us. The Real Native, he wants to come up. There we go. Oh. I don't know what happened there.
You tried to invite him up before the other guest was gone. That's why.
Thank you. Welcome, Real Native. I'll give the floor to you. We're talking about Indigenous Matters and right now how we can motivate more of our people to participate in this upcoming election and try to find some solidarity and common ground.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say splitting our votes is not a good idea, and I think everybody knows that. As Indigenous people, we need to. I don't know if anyone's mentioned, put it in this context, but we need to look at more than just our pocketbooks when we're voting. I constantly hear, lateral violence from our own people. Hey, are you allergic to money and stuff like that? And where else are we going to get jobs other than the oil field and, stuff like that? I think if we poison the land enough, what are we going to do when it's gone? Or what are our grandchildren going to do when it's gone? We have a chance right now to make a difference with our vote. I don't see the Conservatives doing anything good for Indigenous. I put a video up today of a white paper of 1969, and Trudeau Sr. was and Jean Chrétien were the architects of that. Racist document. If anybody's never read it, I urge you to go and look it up. And it was, as Trudeau Sr. had said, it was to make the natives like the rest of Canada and fit in and be actual citizens, which tells you that at that time we weren't considered people unless we did his bidding, and got rid of the reserves and, So, this PP is the same guy. I keep saying he needs his PP slapped, but I see him as Trudeau Sr. all over again. I am thankful that Trudeau Jr. did not turn out like his dad. However, I see as another Jean Chrétien of 1969 and 1970 and Trudeau Sr. I'm worried about what'll happen if he gets in. I'm really worried.
Yeah.
As Indigenous people, I'm worried.
I share that concern.
Absolutely.
It was nice. I don't know if everyone recalls, but Justin Trudeau did. He spoke out against the white paper and his dad's plans to implement that. I'm fortunate. I come from a family. My uncle was Harry Daniels, and he negotiated the inclusion of Métis in Section 35 of the Constitution Act of Canada, and he got to meet with the senior Trudeau and Mr. Chrétien at those times, and I marched on Parliament Hill in 1979 with him.
So did I. we were probably in the same line somewhere.
Yeah,
I went to that. It started at the Kinsman Center and went up to the Alberta Parliament, and
I was in Ottawa. I was on Parliament Hill in Ottawa. Yeah.
Yeah, 1979. We marched from the Kinsman Center in Edmonton to the Parliament building or the legislature in Edmonton, and we heckled the premier then. Uh,
Gosh, who would have
oh,
it
who
been?
was that?
Lougheed?
Lougheed.
I think
Yeah,
so. But
I
so
think so.
real native,
Yeah.
I'm curious about in your nation, are you
Mhm.
seeing interest in the upcoming election? Are the young people talking about any of this? And because I know that also your nation has one of the most instrumental cases before the Supreme Court of Canada.
I'm
So
sorry. I lost track. I'm trying to answer. What were you saying?
I'm just curious about, are you seeing folks in your First Nation, do they have much interest in participating in the election? And are the young people, are they expressing concerns at all? Or,
My
because
brother.
I heard yesterday some young people that really want to participate in this coming
Yeah.
election. So I'm curious what's happening in on your First Nation.
Yeah, I'm reconnecting with my son. He's 34 years old now, and he's telling me that he's very interested in politics. My brother is the chief, and it's his job to keep an eye on on Ottawa. And I hear from it's a mix of yes and no. Some of the older ones are saying, we're not supposed to vote. And I tell them, um, we didn't have the right to vote back then because we weren't considered people. We're considered people now. And when you say that to them, they're like, "Oh, is that why we weren't supposed to vote?" They don't realize that we weren't considered people. Um, so I get a mix of, yes, let's vote, and some of them are like, "What good is it going to do?" You know,
Right.
um, we're 7%. If we get as much of that 7% out as we possibly can, we'll do what we did with the last two elections, and we can determine which way this election goes.
That's right. Look what happened in Manitoba.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the Indigenous vote. Because
Exactly.
Wab Kinew focused his energies in the nations and with the Métis
Yeah.
people there, and he got them motivated and excited to come out and vote because they knew that then they would have a representative at that table.
Mm-hmm.
And it is challenging. I've worked for the federal government myself, and I know, having worked in that world, that the government of Canada is obligated to ensure that all Canadians are
Mm,
being cared for, right? They have to protect the
exactly.
interests of all Canadians. Sadly, though, for far too long, First Nations and Métis people were really never kind of considered the
Nope.
Canadians, right? So our interests weren't always looked after.
No. And I
No.
mean, um, some of our people have been spoiled with the jobs in the oil field too. Very few, but there are some of them that come back from the oil field and they're like, love that money. And never mind that the fact that you can tell when you're near Fort Mac because you can smell it before you see it.
Yep.
And that's not a good thing.
No.
Oh,
I get a headache before I even get there. Like, I start getting an
Oh
instant
yeah.
headache. And I too
Yep.
worked in the oil field. I'm not like, I worked, in a corporate for a bigger company, but I worked in downtown Calgary for in that sector. So
Mhm.
I learned a lot. I learned what I needed to learn to be a better advocate for our people. And it definitely was more challenging to give up that income. And I'll tell you, like, I worked for industry and made six digits, and then I went and worked for a First Nation and made half, and I had five times the workload.
Yeah.
Tell me how that's fair.
well,
Yes. Like
I was,
it's
oh,
Wedge
sorry.
Mars.
Okay, we'll pass it to Smarshy now.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I
real
was
native.
looking, I was looking up actually, Charity had sparked this in me. And we were talking about women's history, and I went to go look at when women could vote in Canada. In 1929, Canadian women were known as people under the citizens under the law in Canada in 1929. That's when they were given their citizenship. And then it goes further. You look at Indigenous men, they weren't given citizenship under the law until 1982.
Yeah.
And then Indigenous women, myself and Treaty Bird and all the other Indigenous women out here, we weren't given citizenship until I was two. So I wasn't even really technically a legal citizen until I was 2 years old. And that really is depressing, and it goes with everything that we've been talking about. We need to fight this together, and we need people that are actually willing to listen and not just be like, oh, well, you guys get money, you guys, it's not about the money. If someone were to offer me $500,000 to vote conservative, I wouldn't take the money. It's not about the money.
Yeah.
It's about the principle and moralities. And Indigenous people, like Treaty Bird had said, the water gives us life. The water connects us in every cell we have. The water is in our blood. It's in our veins. It's in our cells. It's in every part of us. It's how we are, you know. And that's what I'm scared about. If he gets in office, I'm scared that everything we've come so far with, it
Yeah,
is very, very dangerous. And he's the one person he's the monster I'm terrified at night, if I'm being completely
mhm.
honest. He's the monster in the closet that my parents warned me about. You know, don't go in that closet. The monster. That's Pierre to a T.
Thanks, Marcy. We have a new panelist, Carrie GGGGG. So welcome, Carrie, and please, this is a safe space where we practice kindness. So the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much for even having me. Yeah, so you were kind of just talking about how you worked for the federal government and stuff, and I did as well. And I was working for Correctional Services of Canada for at least 15 years, and I didn't even get like they're supposed to give you like a new employee orientation program, like pretty much like right away. And I never got that. I got that 10 years later, actually. And one of the days that was like the most important to me was when I went through all this training, and finally I got this day where they're actually talking about, you know, indigenous stuff, and they're actually getting to the point where they're going how we're overcrowded in the prison system and everything, right? And I think that that's something that so many people don't have. You know, no one sees that, right? Like people might say they see it, but they don't see it. And unless you're actually working in that kind of field, you don't really see it until it's like smacking you in the face. And there was the most beautiful woman I ever saw a long time ago. And she was an indigenous lady, and she literally was crying.
My mother would have been a little too old for you.
Okay, well, hey, I don't know what to say to that, but
Native humor.
regardless, I know you're just being funny, but yeah. I legit, there was this girl who was talking about her father, and her father actually went off and fought in a war for us, right? Way back in the day. And he had to give up. He had to give up his like indigenous status to fight for Canada. And you know what he got gifted with, like when he got back? He got gifted with, you got to take back your status and you got to go back to the res. And that guy literally fought for our country and fought for us to all have freedom. And he sat there on the front lines. And I think that's a terribly sad thing, where I think he did the right thing. Whatever, man. Like he fought for our country. So he loved us all. And he went and he did his thing. But overall, it's like, no, there's something terribly wrong with our government and the people that are deciding everything that we're seeing in today's world.
You know, I sat down with an elder from my reserve one time.
Sorry?
I sat down with an elder from my reserve one time.
Okay.
He sat there with a sad look on his face, and my dad asked him in Cree. He said, "Musham, what's wrong?" He said, "You look sad." And he said, "All I wanted was a beer." And my dad said, "What do you mean?" He said, I'm not treaty right now, he said, because I wanted a beer, so I had to give up my treaty rights. Just so I could go to a
Just to go
bar.
to the liquor store and the bar, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's called disenfranchisement. And
Yeah,
Carrie,
yeah.
I'm wondering if you ever read the book called The 21 Things You Don't Know About the Indian Act.
I haven't. I actually will though.
It's an eye opener, I tell
Just a
you.
good read.
So back to but what you were talking about though. So I know some elders too that went to fight, and they were also promised just like the. So I think it was World War II maybe, where
That's
they
what it
were
was. Yeah.
promised 160 acres or something when you come back. They
Yep.
didn't get that.
What wasn't it?
You either had to disenfranchise or take the land. So if you
Um,
wanted the land, you couldn't be an Indian anymore.
Treaty 6, wasn't that taking script?
Mm-mm.
Sorry.
That was different. So script was a different process, which maybe we should talk about another day.
Hmm.
Um, but
I
that's
thought that,
when you could take the script, so you could take script and get that land, and
mhm.
then so that was a real dirty trick because
Oh yeah.
when they had the signing of the treaty, then there was a script tent where you could go and you could get disenfranchised, give up your status, and get land. But then
Hmm.
next to the next tent was a guy with a case of booze and cash, and he'd buy that land deed for a bottle and like cents on the acre. So
Yeah.
our
Hmm.
people lost so much, and that fire water really served a purpose back in those days,
Yeah.
and it made our minds not clear, and we weren't always knowing what we were agreeing to, our ancestors, right? And it still happens today. I struggled with addictions in my life. Um,
I
made
think
bad
we all.
decisions.
People don't realize what we've gone through or are still going through today. They think we have it so easy. The one video you put out, I saw that comment where the guy said, free money is coming to an end, and I commented, I'd like to know where this free money is because, I'd like some of that.
Right?
And
Yes.
they don't realize what, as Indigenous people, those of us who live on the res, live the life, and our family that lives in the city that is, you know, working the same struggle.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
it's not the I hate to say it, but it's not the same. There,
And it's not free money when we had to give up so
no,
much to,
And
and
I
it's
that's right.
still like
and
it's
I
services. These are services and programs that were committed to us through treaty and through other obligations.
and I
So
don't think I don't think any of us like actually want to project, right? Like
Hmm.
I don't think we want to project that negative energy out there and go, "Oh wow, like guess what? Nothing's okay over here." Like I don't
Hmm.
think we want to do that to people, right? Like we're very kind as people. I know I
Yeah.
am. I always
absolutely.
literally look for a way to try to be positive out of every situation in my life.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, guess what? I don't even have clean drinking water.
Right? And
Try
and coming
try
you having
that.
also you having a job in corrections, you've seen how overrepresented Indigenous people are in that system.
And
Yeah.
it's very sad, but
Chicky
yes.
Burger, it's Marshy, everybody. Thanks for having me. I've got to go. Me and my mom are going to go eat, and then we have to go see about the arrangements and stuff like that.
Enjoy your dinner,
But
sir.
I just wanted
Okay.
to stop in, say
Me
hi, and
Thank you. I
me
appreciate you,
too.
bud.
Have a good
Nana's
take
night.
going
care.
now.
See you.
Yeah.
Hi,
See you
hi, my
guys.
friend.
Hi,
Well,
hi.
and not to mention, there's so many misconstrued views of Indigenous people, like, oh, we just live off the land and we get all this money, and that's not even a thing. Like,
And I think the poverty line, like if you really think about it for like 10 seconds,
yeah,
people that are indigenous, we live on the fucking poverty line. And I'm
We live
sorry for
on it.
right.
swearing. I know I shouldn't swear on this
No,
platform. However, I'm saying we live on the poverty line. Why do you need to like degrade us even more? Like why?
well, not only that, and this is something that I've learned from more elders that I've been talking to on here in like real life. Um, you don't have to be status indigenous to be, you don't have to be status to be indigenous.
No, you don't.
Non-status. is still Indigenous, and you don't have to be culturally Indigenous to be Indigenous. You are Indigenous if you have the bloodline, if you can trace back your steps. Because I was reading Northwest is Our Mother. It's actually
Mhm.
about the Métis people, and my family is in that book if you read it. Uh, I
Okay.
won't give the names, but just read the book. It'll make sense. But
Yeah,
it just, it
but
saddens me.
I'm kind of glad that you brought this up too, because there are, the part of the reason I wanted to host this Indigenous Matters on Beaver Politics is to
Mm.
try to create some solidarity within Indigenous people. Because right now, I have contracts and things with the government of Canada. I facilitate a lot of conversations between First Nations and Métis, and there's a divide between Métis and First Nations, and it's a created divide. And the more we allow governments to divide us, the less powerful we are. So I'm hoping that through these conversations, we can start to break down those divides and we can find our common ground. We're not all going to agree all the time, but the seven sacred teachings, which are on the screen, are what guide us in our work and who we are in our relationships with one
Mhm.
another. And I think those are so critical in paving a new future for us. So I'm really been enjoying the conversation. I hope we get to have a lot more. How are we doing, Nerdy, for time? And
You're good. You still have half an hour.
okay, awesome. So if anybody else wants to join the discussion, so Carrie, I just wanted to clarify: Are you you're Indigenous too?
I'm Mohawk.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm Mohawk. So, um, yeah, and I've actually been getting more in touch with that all, because hate to say it, like you're going through school back in the day, you go, yeah, I'm Indigenous, but I think it was like a foreign subject back in the day, you
Yeah.
know, and now it's like I don't know, like for me, I'm 50-50, okay? So I know that there are people that are like 10-90, and it's all the same to me. You're Indigenous or you're not. Like at the end of the day, you believe in a creator, you believe in, the love of land, and you believe in like Mother Nature stuff. Like it's either calling you home or it's not, right? So for me, it always called me home, right? So for me, I'm still at that point where I'm just like, yeah, you know what? I love certain things that are way beyond my control. I don't even understand them, but I love them. And, you want to talk about like that's something. When
Yeah.
you go, when you go, wow, I don't even understand this, but guess what? It's in my blood.
Right?
Right?
Absolutely. And that's one thing, like I too, that's what I was saying earlier. I'm not sure if you were here when I was talking about how I grew up in Calgary, but yet was always drawn to the bush and I'm drawn to wildlife. And it's because it is in our blood. We are born biologists.
Yes, we
Like
are. Yes,
we
we
know
are.
things just because it's in our
I
genes.
agree. It's in our DNA, it's in our cells, it's in
Yeah,
everything that we are.
And
We
we
are more than,
see we see the most beautiful things ever.
absolutely. So Carrie, are you living in your nation or do you
So
um,
I'm living in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. Yeah,
and are you seeing are people getting concerned about our future and are they interested in
I would
participating
say
in the
I
election?
would say people are certainly concerned. Um, I don't think people really see a lot of hope right now, and I think that comes down to just overall what we're putting out there, right? So I'm not a big Justin Trudeau fan. Um, but I don't really want Pierre Polyev either.
Yeah.
um, I want I want somebody that just kind of speaks for everybody in a way where it's like they care about everyone, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what it should come down to, right? Is we got to get to the point where we're looking at the individual and we're just like, you know what? I care about you just because you're a person.
Yeah.
And I think that so many people are so fixated on this otherworldly thing, and it's like, why? Why are we doing this to ourselves? We don't even need that. We need to show up for everybody. You know,
Yeah.
that's what we need to do.
It's like
That's
you see those shirts that say there's no planet B. Like we're all in this together and we share this
Mhm.
space with one another, regardless of our indigeneity or not being indigenous. You know, many of my close friends are non-indigenous people. Um, and like I had somebody come into one of my videos saying that, oh, yeah, trying to school me, and somebody who's not even indigenous saying, you know, the Cree and the Blackfoot don't even get along, and I'm like, that's funny. My Blackfoot friends must secretly hate me then. So you know, like it's just there's so much.
exactly. Why are you shitting on me and spreading the hate? Why are we hating?
Yeah.
Yeah, why do we?
We don't
And
need hate
again,
here.
So you know,
Carrie.
I
Oh, go
think
ahead.
a goal for us in this conversation, and if we can continue this discussion every Monday at 6 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, we could maybe create a different conversation here where we unite everybody, not just Indigenous people, where we're all talking with each other in kindness and with caring and mutual respect. We follow our sacred teachings, we share those teachings with each other. I guess this isn't just for us. This, you know, our settler population isn't going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We have new people still coming. And
Mhm.
and I'm hopeful too that even the newcomers that are arriving are able to learn some things from these discussions too, because sadly, I've seen a lot of newcomers arrive here, and the first thing they learn is bad stuff about Indigenous people, and they learn to be racist against
Which
us very
is
quickly.
so fucking sad. It's
It
like
is.
how, how do you even create those beliefs?
Yeah.
Like,
And you know, I'm sure a lot of it comes from homelessness and the addictions and things that we see on the city streets, sadly. But it's not just our people that are suffering from those things.
I think
So
it's everybody actually.
truly is, but unfortunately, it's been many of us for longer. Nerdy, go
You
ahead.
mean the homelessness and addictions that were caused by the government in the first place? Like that's the thing. Like the
1000%.
government puts you in the position to be in those, like puts you in that position, but then won't help you out of that position that they put you into in the
Absolutely.
first
So
Exactly.
so I don't know. Are you guys both from BC or no?
I'm in
I was
Alberta.
born in
We're all
BC.
Alberta.
Oh,
I
okay.
was
And
I was
I'm
born
I'm
in
I'm in Ontario, so I don't know. But I
I
I
was
I know I know out in BC they have a major problem.
yeah, I was born in Abbotsford, BC, and I moved to Mission when I was like, oh God, two, maybe three. So
Okay.
I grew up for the first 12 years of my life and then moved to Podunk, Alberta. So, you know, if you know where I live, you know where I live.
No, that's fine. Yeah, yeah, sure. No,
I was
like
born and raised in Calgary, but my ancestral lands are in Saskatchewan.
Industrial lands are in Manitoba, and then Saskatchewan, and then North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, and back to Saskatchewan. So they're all over.
Yeah. Well, and that's the way our people were, right? We have deep connections all across Turtle Island.
Yeah.
Our trades and all, you know, we shared relations, we shared resources. You know, they find corn in some of the archaeological sites here in Alberta, and we weren't growing corn here 500 years ago, or so.
I
It's
never I never went to Alberta. My sister actually
Don't.
lives out there, but when I went to BC, I swear to God, it was like the most beautiful thing in the world because I was going down to like some historical sites and stuff, and they had all sorts of kind of like, you know, native kind of artifacts all over the
Hmm.
place. And to me, it was the most beautiful thing in the world, right? Like I'm literally sat there and I'm looking at these things and, you know, TP poles, the whole 9 yards. And I'm just like, yep, you know what?
Yeah.
Oh shit, man, that was something. Like,
Right?
and I think that people can't even see the beautiful stuff out of that, where it's like, I don't even know how they did it. How'd
right?
they do it? Why? How did they even do that?
I
But
know, right?
they did it, and they made it look fucking beautiful, man. To the point
So
where
we have to watch our language, but
I'm
I want to
sorry, I'm
also share
sorry.
something to think about. And I'm not trying to promote Justin Trudeau or the Liberal Party or anything, but I just want to remind, like, remember before he was the prime minister, you never saw us on the news. You didn't see journalists that were Indigenous. You didn't see Indigenous businesses popping up. You didn't
Mm-mm.
see Indigenous signage, language in places. And those things are coming back. And that is a path of reconciliation that had never been implemented in the past.
But do you believe like that is a him thing, or do you believe like that is a times are changing thing?
I think it's a him thing.
I think
Absolutely.
it's a both.
Really? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And full
Okay.
disclosure, I'm a member of the Liberal Party of Canada. I don't know if I will always be because, I'm very strategic on how I participate in government. But I work very closely in protecting land and trying to promote reconciliation. And I can tell you, I've had a lot more opportunity in the last decade than I had before. My voice is stronger. I can come to tables with government officials. I've been in the same room with the premier and I can have conversations. I've been actually in the same room with Justin Trudeau and had him listen to what I have to say, and Mark Miller, and listen with sincerity and contemplate my ideas and have a conversation with me, where previously that had never happened. We were tokenized a lot, where bring the Indigenous person to the meeting so we can check off some boxes. But this was like, I've seen real change where we're actually influencing policy, we're influencing the direction that new legislation is taking. And I just want to remind our friends here too that if you look at Mr. Poilievre's voting record, he voted
Hmm.
against safe drinking water. He voted against the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act.
Hmm.
He voted against missing and murdered Indigenous women. So I just share that as something to consider, some food for thought, because we need to do our homework this time. I think we're in a critical place where some of that reconciliation and reconciliation that's been taking place may not continue. We've been empowered. We have Indigenous people are caring for 50,000 acres of Canada right now through Indigenous peoples conservation areas. The
Hmm.
government of Canada has written regulations that give authorities to chief and councils over resource development. The Canada Energy Regulator is working with Indigenous people to build a mechanism for oversight of pipelines. So all of these things will not be funded under a conservative government. And I say this with confidence because I've worked for the federal government through both a liberal and a conservative party leadership.
Yes.
And as soon as the conservatives take that seat, the first thing they cut is Indigenous funding.
And shouldn't they want to get rid of UNDRIP? That's another one. I think that's
Sorry,
showing
they want to get
about
rid of.
UNDRIP. It's
Oh,
the
okay.
United Nations Indigenous.
Yeah.
Declaration on the Rights of
Sorry.
Indigenous People.
I just didn't hear you.
It's okay. I
Okay.
want to share a little teaching. So Wilton Littlechild from the Musqueam Cree Nations here in Alberta, Central Alberta, Treaty 6 territory. He was at the table to negotiate the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples with the UN. So he has taught us, as many people as he can, that he finds it insulting when we call it UNDRIP. And he asks that we call it the UN deck, because UNDRIP has kind of it kind of waters it down.
Yeah,
It
no,
makes
for sure.
So I just want to share that because out of respect for our esteemed elder and leader, that it's a teaching I've heard and I wanted to share. So sorry to cut anyone off.
Did you have you ever watched North of 60?
Oh my gosh, long ago.
Yes, everyone
That
did.
is that okay, well, for me, I still watch it, okay? I don't even care. I'm literally 36 years old. I'll still watch it. And
I'm 41.
I
I'll still watch it.
I think that it is probably one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. And it kind of really captures us, you know? And if any I don't know. I guess I don't know how to say it the proper way without like offending people, but Um, yeah, if you're some white person and you're watching that right there, that show, and you go, "Oh my God, what are these guys going through? Or what have they ever gone through?" If you watch that for 10 seconds, you're literally going to be captured. Like you're gonna be fucking sorry for swearing. Okay, I did it again. I'm sorry. You're gonna be literally thrown into that world where literally all you want is to like make sure those guys are okay.
You get
And
empathy, right? It's empathy.
yeah, I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
I just want to say one quick thing.
Please.
As the YT person in here, don't worry about offending people like me, because seriously, if somebody's offended by you saying something like that, they have more to unpack than like they have unpacking that they need to do, and there's a reason why they're offended, and they need to look at that has nothing to do with Indigenous people. It's that person who needs to do that unpacking. So I would don't ever be afraid to like say anything like that, because that says more about
Right.
them than it does anybody else.
I certainly appreciate exactly what you're saying right now.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Nerdy. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your words.
You are so kind.
And Carrie and Smarshy, like I actually, like I was saying earlier, when I wasn't creating. I've been on this app for a while, and I wasn't creating because I was considering running in the next election. But it became too violent. I live in rural Alberta, and it's scary for me here. And I would never be able to door knock or, go and have a platform. So I've decided against it. Plus, it wouldn't be safe for my family anymore either, right? And I've decided
Which is
against.
sad. I'm
It
sorry.
is sad. I agree.
That's sad.
But here we are, and I have started creating, and when I have seen in my creating of TikToks now how many Canadians are truly allies and want better for Indigenous people and understand. See, before the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report came
Hmm.
out, nobody even knew. I didn't know about residential schools. I didn't know about 60 Scoop. I had no clue. So going through reconciliation has been traumatic. Learning all of
Hmm.
these things, watching the movies like Little Bird, and there's other ones I can't think of the names of them right now, but I have been traumatized thinking about this as what our ancestors went through.
I
And
hate to ask you. I hate to ask you, but did you have like family that went through that situation or no?
so my great grandmother married a half breed and lost her
Okay.
status. So they were
Yeah.
half breeds in a little town in Saskatchewan next to a bunch of First Nations. My
Hmm.
father was very fortunate, and his siblings, that they never experienced that, but they did definitely experience disparity, racism, and discrimination. Um,
Assimilation was one of a kind, right?
yeah. So
Yeah.
um, it's been a learning experience, and it's been a hard journey to learn about our histories. And the goal of having this conversation is together we can honor our ancestors, and we can be the ancestors that our descendants will honor. And we need to do that because those ancestors endured so much so that we could be here today having this conversation.
Exactly. I think that's the appropriate message for anything regarding this, because at the end of the day, those people somehow were very, very strong. And
Uh-huh.
they did things that we possibly couldn't even comprehend.
Right?
And I mean that. No, I mean that
It's
though.
true. I agree.
Like I mean it. Like no, they went through the grind that I wouldn't have been able to do it. I know
Yeah.
that. And so it's like, yeah, I hear you. Like I'm thankful. And I love those people so very much just for even giving me a chance, you know? And here I am. We're talking on this platform tonight. So for me, yeah, man, like it's all about just trying to say what you've been through, having people know what you kind of been through, and then kind of spreading that message and people maybe being able to relate a little bit, you know?
And, and it's not to say without cause that this affects us today. Again, I can't stress it's the fact that if we don't talk about what happened back then, it's not in the past because it still happens to this day. So it may just look like a little different than what we actually know it to be, but it's not, you know, it's not colonization like it was back then. It's not we're all being kicked on reserves, we're all giving papers to leave our reserves. What it
Mhm.
is, it's a uh, it's a modern day societal colonization, if that makes any sense. Like
Oh,
it's modernized.
it 100% does, and I
It
can
makes perfect
attest.
sense.
Like I have sat around tables talking about, Indigenous rights and how problematic that is for the future development of our economy in this country, because our economy has been based on natural resources from the beginning, right? It started with fur, then it was
Hmm.
timber, and then
Hmm.
minerals, and then oil and
Yeah.
gas, right? And
Yep.
agriculture. Never forget
Yep.
about agriculture. So all of these things have had serious impacts to us and our rights. And it continues today. We're still being colonized. It's just, you know what the difference is we're at the table now. We're at the table and we're able to influence the way in which it's being performed, right? So we can play a role in it. We can participate with jobs and contracts and other opportunities through impact benefits agreements and things. And we can also be at that table to make sure that Mother Earth is being protected and that our future generations will have these same opportunities to be on the land, but also to participate in this economy. So,
I'm a firm believer in land back for all Indigenous people, and that does not mean we want to displace white people or the European
oh, no.
Canadians.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's not what it is. And I've had many conversations. It's not me wanting to displace the European Canadians. It's just us getting the stewardship of the land so we can reverse the climate change that is happening today. Because if we don't start now, Mother Earth is going to start breaking down and stuff is going to get a lot more difficult, and a lot more.
And that's
I
already
want to say
happening.
Yeah.
I don't want to say worser because that's not a word, but it
The sentiments there. And,
yeah,
and land back is a contentious phrase for some people, or especially our non-Indigenous Canadians. They fear it, I think. And I've participated in some meetings in this province where they think we're coming for their land now. And that's not it at all. Like Smarshy, you're so right. It's about stewardship. It's about us playing a role in the regulatory process. It's about us playing a role in guardianship of land, monitoring activities on the land, making sure that land is being brought back and reclaimed and restored back to the way it was prior to
Taken
whatever
care of,
development. That's what land back is about.
for sure.
Yeah. So I noticed that we have about 7 minutes left for tonight's discussion. Um, I've really enjoyed myself. I appreciate the conversation. I would like to come back again next week and continue talking about this, what's coming up for our election, and how we can motivate more of our Indigenous friends, family, neighbors, colleagues to consider participating in this election, because unfortunately, Indigenous turnout is often low. And again, it comes to the trust and the historic relationship that Indigenous people have had with government at all levels, federal, provincial, and municipal. But our voices are important, and we need to demonstrate to the rest of Canada that we are here. We want to be heard. We need to be heard, and hopefully they'll see how important our voices are too.
I agree with you so much, but I think that we need to like stop alienating our peoples then,
Yes.
right? So, for me, go out and vote. I don't really care who you vote for. Just vote.
Yeah.
You have a voice now, eh? and and you might not have always had that one, and now you do. So go out and vote, because what what did like people fight for us, man? They fought for you to have that right. So
Yes.
just maybe pay some respect to those that did that groundwork, you know?
Absolutely. And we're the only people in this country that have rights that are enshrined in the Constitution. Section
Hmm.
35 upholds our rights as Indigenous people. And we have to do our part. We have a responsibility too to our future generations and to our ancestors, like I was saying before. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we had this conversation. Let's see how we do in here. We got 4 more minutes, I think. And if
Yeah.
and I hope, please spread the word. We're going to do this every Monday at 6 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. So please share, invite others to come and join the conversation. I'm open to having guests come up and be, co-host with me and have special guests. So if you want to recommend somebody that might have some interesting things to bring forward and add to the conversation, I would love for that, because we are oral people. We talked about things. We like to share our experiences, share our knowledge, and share our kindness. And I want to make sure that we always have a safe place to come to and have these conversations.
And one more thing.
Okay,
Okay.
Um,
Smarchy.
Sorry.
oh, as people, we are not a religious but and there are many Indigenous people who are religious, and that's their belief. Mother
Hmm.
Nature is just something that's around us. It's something that Creator created, and that's our belief. It's not a religion. It's our understanding that Mother Nature is tied into all of us. Again, it's it's the fact that we as people, we know how strong we are. We know we can do this, and we know we need the most representation in Parliament. Because if we don't, we are going to lose this earth. And I would love an Indigenous Prime Minister, but Canada's not ready for that. They're
Yeah,
barely
that's
ready for a
probably not going to
premier.
happen.
Someday.
They're ready for a premier. They just have a premier that's Indigenous, and that's okay.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Um,
Um, I'm gonna check out right now. I just wanted to thank you for your platform. I didn't think that I was gonna come across a channel like this tonight. I'm thankful that I did. I'm thankful that I got a chance to say a few things. And yeah, I'm gonna try to check back in on Monday. If you're saying you're gonna do this on Mondays, cool. I'm gonna try. But if I don't, just know that I think what you're doing is amazing, and yeah, just keep doing this because some people might need to hear this. And hey, man, like as much as you're gonna spread the word, I'm gonna spread the word too. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Carrie, for joining us. And I'm going to turn it over to Charity. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So
have
I
a good
just
one.
wanted before you leave, so for everybody who's the last 20 people who are in here, we are going to be doing Beaver Politics 5 nights a week now, Monday through Friday. We normally were just doing it on Thursdays, but Mondays will be Indigenous Matters. Tuesdays is going to be News Hour with Frontline Feminist. She's just going to be talking about like all of it's going to be information only. So if you want to pop in for that, 6 to 7 Mountain Time, so 8 to 9, no, 6 to 7, yes, 8 to 9 Pacific time. No, not Pacific, Eastern time. I don't know what I'm talking about. And then on Wednesdays we're gonna have Generation Next. So we're gonna be talking about different topics that affect the youth and how we can get them engaged in voting, like in the upcoming election, and just get them engaged in politics. Thursdays will still be our general open conversation and topic, like just regular topics. Open conversation, respectful dialogue. We may have presentations and stuff as well. And then Friday is my night, which is debate night. I spent the last 2 years in the debate space. So Fridays is my night. Yeah. So I'll be on the Beaver Politics channel and hosting debate space, respectful debate and discussion space. So
Beautiful. Awesome.
yeah.
This has been an amazing evening. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I hope you can all come back next week.
I love being here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. Okay.